It hasn't been long since I looked at a Scottish locomotive, that being the Highland Railway Strath class, but it has been a hot minute since I last reviewed something from the Caledonian Railway, so I may as well remedy that situation with an engine you may never have heard of. This is the 191 class, a 460 tender engine modelled for the game by Caledonia Works. The 191 class was released for TS Classic on the 15th of December 2019, and 6 years later, she is still available to buy from CW's website for £15, or around 32 New Zealand dollars, at full price. I remember picking up the 191 class in March 2020, at a time when, as a goodwill gesture, Mr. Wilson temporarily made all of his Caledonian Railway locomotive packs free of charge. For context, this was in the early days of the Patrick Anderson Never Determined Extreme Measures in Choreography, and for anyone who doesn't understand what I just said, that was an acronym. As an aside, if anyone was going to determine extreme measures in choreography, or conduct any kind of lessons in that field, I think it would be Toni Basil, especially if what she achieved in the Mickey music video, not to mention several other productions, is anything to go by. The 191 class was designed by William Pickersgill and built by the North British Locomotive Company in 1922. Only 8 examples of this class were built, and they were finished 5 months before the Caledonian Railway was merged into the London, Midland and Scottish Railway. The 191s initially helped the 55 class 460s and 179 class 440s on the Callander and Oban line, but also ran on other ex-Caledonian Railway lines. These engines weren't necessarily a bad design, but they still had issues. For one thing, the class had a reputation for being short of steam, but this was dependent on the fireman's skill. And for another, they also had issues with hammer blow, something whose meaning I struggle to remember, in all honesty, although I'm pretty sure that it's something to do with the cylinders. In any case, this was a short-lived class, with the first example being withdrawn in 1939 and the last in 1945, having been displaced by William Stanya's Black Fives. Sadly, none of the 191s have survived into preservation. Let's take a look at all the liveries that come with this add-on. Upon initial release, you got Caledonian Railway Light Blue, LMS pre-1927 Crimson Lake, and LMS post-1928 lined black. As part of an update released 2 days after the main pack, Chris added a variant of Cali Light Blue with a thistle decoration, as apparently seen on the real locomotive number 196. He also added Cali Dark Blue, even though none of the 191s received this livery in real life. As for what that AC44C6M is doing back there, your guess is as good as mine. The 191 uses an older version of SimNation's scripting, specifically Locomotion 1.2, so she doesn't have the more advanced features that you will see on newer CW products. As a random example of such a product, here's the London and North Eastern Railway A1/1 Pacific. Of course, performance mode is still present on the Scottish 460, and it turns off point lights to improve the game's performance on lower-end computers. Incidentally, performance mode, which is toggled with Shift P, has been a staple feature on CW products right from the start. Other features on the 191 class include, but are not limited to, multiple cab camera views, custom Caledonian or LMS lamps, depending on the variants you choose, a fully detailed cab, 3D firebox, dynamic exhaust particles, and fire intensity synchronized with the exhaust beat. I've been told that, as steam is exhausted up the chimney, it draws air through the grate, which causes the fire to burn hotter, and that explains why the fire flashes brighter with each chuff. More details on the 191's features, and how to drive this locomotive, can be found in the manual. I am of the opinion that she is fairly easy to drive, so I can't imagine it would be too difficult for newcomers to get the hang of it. As for the textures, what you've been seeing on the 191 throughout this video is slightly different from what you get with the default pack. I've installed a texture patch made by EpicBanastard and available on the Golden Age Developments website. In the description, I have included links to GAD's website and the EB channel. No, not that EB, you silly tosser! The specific patch in question doesn't just work for the 191, but also the 34 class 260 and Highland Railway Jones Goods 460. As for what the patch does, it's one of those colour correction / de-bluing setups again. Incidentally, the original version of this video's script had me mentioning a lack of intention to review the Jones Goods anytime soon, so that had to be changed. To give you an idea of just how long these videos can take to come to fruition, the script for the 191 class was first written in November 2024. And now for some random observations I made while inspecting the 191 class. These were the weathering effects and animated rod on the Westinghouse air pump, a tablet catcher apparatus on the cab's left-hand side, the animated reverser rod, which I always like to see, prominent cylinders that could give the Great Western 460s a run for their money, and this brass thing rocking back and forth above the valve gear. I don't know what this is, to be honest. I remember hearing about how the real 191s weren't all that good at climbing hills, so I decided to try running one of these engines on one of the hillier parts of Western Lines of Scotland. More specifically, I went on the 29.9 mile long section from Castle Douglas to Newton Stewart, where gradients get as steep as 1 in 60. To give the engine a good challenge, I set her up with 7 Lucky 7 coaches, but I'm not sure why I went for the Matrix Trains 12-wheel Pullmans in particular. According to the manual, the ideal fire mass for this locomotive is 800 to 900 pounds on the F5 heads-up display. That's equivalent to between 55 and 62% on the F4 HUD, which I still use because it's what I'm used to. As for the locomotive's performance on this run to Newton Stewart, she made it up to 49 miles per hour by the time she reached Cross Michael, as opposed to George Michael, and steamed well on the mostly flat section through Parton and across the Loch Ken Viaduct. I got her up to 62 miles per hour by the time we reached the 1 in 80 climb to New Galloway, but she was down to 57 miles per hour upon reaching the station. Even with the reverser at 20% cutoff, the regulator in the roof, and the boiler pressure still above 170 psi, the locomotive still struggled to maintain speed on gradients of 1 in 100 or steeper. Even if I'm doing a less demanding run, such as Castle Douglas to Kirkcudbright, I still try to maintain the fire mass at its ideal level regardless of which engine I'm driving, although this can result in the safety valves constantly blowing off. I don't know how other people who own the 191 manage, but I found this locomotive to be a bit thirstier than others I've driven, even when stationary. After passing Bushbuck, the B1, at Lockscarrow, I thought, screw it, and decided to gun it down the incline towards Little Water of Fleet Viaduct to maximise the chances of getting over the next hill without losing too much speed. I tried the same thing with the 1 in 60 climb from Big Water of Fleet Viaduct up to Gatehouse of Fleet Station. The engine was doing 72 miles per hour by the time she hit the grade, but was down to 50 upon reaching the station. After the fact, it was a much easier run down the hill to Creetown, a station with a speed limit for which I highly recommend slowing down. Unfortunately, the bloody signalman only went and sent me through the loop at a moment's notice, even though I swear I already had the points set to take me on the main, as opposed to take me on the floor. It's quite unnerving when you suddenly get sent into the loop at Creetown when you're doing 41 miles per hour, and the loop's speed limit is only 20. That annoying signalman aside, Creetown was followed by booking it through the abandoned Palnure station, crossing the Cree Viaduct, and storming up one last incline, at 1 in 100, before arriving at Newton Stewart. Despite the heavy train and steep gradients, 196 performed better than I was expecting, as she still made it to Newton Stewart without stopping, and her boiler pressure never dropped below 170 psi. Just for the heck of it, here's a lineup of all the Caledonian Railway 460s that Chris has modelled for TS. In closing, I honestly don't consider myself to be a big fan of the 191 class, but this add-on from CW is still perfectly fine for what it is, and I think she deserves a 6.9 out of 10. It would be nice to see a new version of the 191 class, complete with Locomotion 2.0 scripting and all the other modcons, but I'm still content with what we've currently got.